We'll go ahead and call to order the Tuesday, March 2nd meeting of the Corte Madera Town Council. Rebecca, could we have a roll call, please?
Thank you. Councilmember Casissa?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Councilmember Ravazio?
Here.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart?
Here.
Mayor Beckman?
Here, thank you. Please join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. That brings us to open time for public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on any items that are not on our agenda tonight. Any members of the public who would like to comment can raise their hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org, and we'll be given 3 minutes apiece to make their comment. And again, this is only for items that are not on our agenda. So if any members of the public here tonight would like to make any comments, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom. Rebecca, did we get any emailed public comments for open time?
Oh, thank you, Mayor Beckman. We did not, but we did get one public comment that I wasn't sure where to place it. It was from Mary Kaiser, who commented on item 6A as well, but also included one portion of her public comment that was directed toward other items on the agenda, multiple items, and it said conflicts of interest. Thank you for addressing conflicts of interest throughout. My experience over the past year is that this is a common problem with various public entities and agencies in Marin County. It should be noted that the town of Corte Madera is taking a leadership stance on such matters by mitigating potential challenges in the future by preventing upfront. And I wasn't sure where to place that public comment, so I added it under just open time for public comment since it was more of a general public comment related to the agenda as a whole.
That's great, thank you. And then we'll come back when we get to item 6A. I see that she's on the line, so she can either comment in person if she likes, or we can just read her email. And we've got a hand up from Sophie Taubman.
Hello, good evening, Corte Madera City Council members. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Youth Advisory Council, which I am on, working to reduce youth substance use in our community. And I'm also just here on behalf of all youth in our community. And I just want to say thank you for putting the multi-unit housing agenda item on tonight's agenda and discussing that. I know that we all feel really strongly, and I'm sure you all do because you put it on the agenda, about reducing secondhand smoke in our community and the effect that it has on those relating to it. So we will be on the call and would be happy to comment later in the evening when it comes up.
Perfect, that would be great. Great, thank you, Sophie. And we'll just have one more second here for any folks. Again, this is for comments on items that are not on our agenda tonight. And then we'll do a separate public comment for each agenda item for folks that want to make comments specifically about those items. Let's see, I'm not seeing any other hands go up, so it looks like no other comments for open time, so we will close open time. There are no presentations, which brings us to item 4, our consent calendar. These are items that are routine or have been previously discussed and do not require further discussion. Any member of the council or public can pull an item from the consent calendar for further discussion. We'll start with the council. Would any members of the council like to pull an item from our consent calendar? Yeah, David?
Well, I wanted to make sure that there was a comment made by somebody that for the purpose of the ad of the $20,000 for the climate adaptation work is to extend the communication with the public and extend the involvement of the public in that process. And then I was wondering whether anybody else felt a need to pull the evacuation item because so many changes happened to it right up until the last couple of days, and it's kind of a very live issue. And I think it would be very nice to have a very short report from RJ or somebody on where that work stands, please.
Sure. Okay. So you're talking about pulling item 4C. That's the grand jury report. Okay. We can pull 4C if you would like. Would anybody else like to pull any items from the consent calendar? Alrighty. If not, we will turn this over to the public. So if any members of the public would like to pull an item from our consent calendar to have it specifically discussed, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. And Rebecca, did we get any email comments about any consent calendar items?
We did not receive any emailed public comments.
Okay, great. And I'm not seeing any hands go up, so we will close public comment on the consent calendar. And I would take a motion on items 4A, 4B, and 4D through 4F. Fred.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve those items.
I'll
Thank you. Is
second.
there a second? Great. Thank you, Bob. Rebecca, could we get a vote on those, please?
Councilmember Casissa, Councilmember Casissa,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you very much, Rebecca. And then now 4C, which is approve response to the Marin County Civil Grand Jury report titled Roadblocks to Safer Evacuation in Marin County. David, do you have any specific questions, or did you just want staff to just kind of speak briefly to the process?
The latter, please.
Okay, sounds good. Are there any other council questions? We'll kind of just go through our normal process. So any other questions before we take public comment and then bring it back to staff? Okay, seeing none. If any members of the public would like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email public comment at tcmmail.org. Again, this is item 4C, response to the Civil Grand Jury report regarding evacuation safety. And I am not seeing any hands go up, so we'll close public comment and bring item 4C back to the council. Todd, would you mind just giving us a little overview?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I want to thank Rebecca Vaughn, our assistant manager and town clerk, for writing the staff report and really coordinating with Adam Wolf, our planning director, and RJ Suko, our public works director, on this response. Staff, as stated in this report, we don't speak on other governmental agencies. And so that part of it, our response, we believe, is appropriate. But what we'll also say is that this is a priority for us. It's in the town council work plan for this year. It's been in our work plan for previous years. We're moving full steam ahead with the new county JPA. We're really, we're focused on coordinating with that fire JPA through our fire chief, Ruben Martin, on alert systems, on evacuation systems, doing a countywide analysis. And so our WUI area, our high-risk area within our community, is part of that countywide evaluation that is ongoing right now. And so that's a big step for us. And as you know, we've really focused in prior years and years moving forward on clearing our high-risk areas, our evacuation routes through vegetation management, and really looking at ways to improve those evacuation routes, our steps and our pathways as we go down the hills, identifying them. We're in discussions now of evaluating as staff and with those neighborhoods of naming those pathways and route ways down the hill with signage and making sure they're clear and looking at improvements. And so that's ongoing. And so the other one is we've talked about siren systems, and we've done multiple agencies have evaluated those. Mill Valley went to a specific siren system. We're really connected to Larkspur and Mill Valley in a lot of ways when it comes to that response. We didn't get the results that we thought we would, and so we continue to evaluate those on a routine basis. But we did go to the high-low siren system through our emergency vehicles recently with CMPA on how to alert our neighborhoods in progress when things happen. And so again, it's a high priority for us. We can always do more, but this is something that we've been focused on. I think the responses are appropriate. We made an amendment, as the Vice Mayor stated, right before the meeting, and we used an example of Sir Francis Drake initially of the center medians, allowing ways where people can come down, the street in a safe way if they had to evacuate. But really, we have a better example. It's the climate adaptation plan and all the work we're doing there, right? And so that was the amendment that was made just before this meeting. And as you know, that's a key document that'll come to the council in the coming weeks to really approve about 85% of that work. A lot of that is the work that we've done on the evacuation routes and how to improve and make the hillside safer in the event that we have to get someone down from the hill. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you may have with this grand jury report. Thanks again, Rebecca, for all your work.
Oh,
Great,
Todd,
thank you,
a lot
Todd.
of the bullet points were provided by Chief Martin, and he provided those bullet points to both Corte Madera and Larkspur to use in the preparation of this response based on their opinions on the work that they had been doing.
I'll just say too that Councilmember Ravazio is our board member, our representative for Corte Madera, and I am our representative for the operations committee for that JPA. And Todd Lando and Ruben Martin on the fire side have really taken the lead on this. And I think this is, and I think our taxpayers understood how important this is to really approach this at a county-wide level, just like this grand jury report speaks to. And I really think that JPA is the mechanism to make these things happen moving forward.
Fantastic, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from council members? And if not, we'll take a motion.
Move to, we approve 4C.
Thank you. Is there a second? Perfect. Thank you, Fred. And Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Casissa,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you. That concludes our consent calendar and brings us to item 5, public hearings. Our first public hearing is 5A, discussion and possible introduction of ordinance number 1005 pertaining to moving our elections. And I will let staff take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Beckman. Just as a brief summary of the last council meeting's discussion, we did bring this forward for council discussion and direction at the previous meeting on February 16th. And it was the direction provided to staff that given the change imposed on us by the state to alternate the years in which the statewide direct primary was in June or March, depending on whether or not it was a presidential primary year, and the fluctuation that that unintended consequence on the town's election schedules just merited examining a move to November general election cycle. So the town attorney and her staff worked on a draft ordinance incorporating that direction, and the ordinance, if introduced, would move the town's election cycle to November of even years. And the ordinance as proposed would make that move beginning in November of 2022, which is a year that we would have been scheduled to have a June election. So the introduction and possible adoption of the ordinance would not only move the elections to November of even years, but would also extend council member terms to November of the year in which they would have been up for re-election.
Great. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Do we have any questions from council members? I know that this is pretty reminiscent of our discussion at our last meeting. Alrighty, if not, we'll open this up to members of the public. So if any members of the public would like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. Rebecca, have we received any email comment about this item?
We had not earlier, but let me just refresh quickly.
Thank you.
No, we have not received any emailed public comment.
Great, thank you. And we are not having any hands go up here in the audience. I know it's not a particularly exciting item, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion and a possible motion to introduce this ordinance. Who'd like to start us off? Yeah, Fred.
Yeah, I was going to go ahead and make the motion to introduce the ordinance.
Great.
I'll second it.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. And Rebecca, whenever you're ready.
Councilmember Casissa,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to 5B, which is consideration and possible introduction of ordinance number 1006, amending various portions of the code relating to prohibiting smoking in public places, and I believe in multi-unit residential properties. And I will turn it over to staff.
Thank you again, Mayor Beckman. This one is a little more complicated than the previous ordinance to discuss, but we've got Amy Ackerman and Todd both here to help discuss and answer any questions. But I do know that you are aware that the origination of this discussion was from public comment received at the December council meeting, alerting us to a loophole that still existed in the town's existing ordinance. Back when the original multi-unit housing ordinance was originally reviewed and adopted in 2014, the town, along with several other cities at the time, adopted it with 80% smoke-free housing, thinking that within a few years of its introduction, we would come back and address the additional 20% and move toward 100% smoke-free multi-unit housing. That wasn't done at that time, and we were made aware of the changes that county and other cities had looked at, and the town attorney's office did some research about other cities that had moved to 100% smoke-free multi-unit housing. And at the same time, also took it upon themselves to clean up the ordinance a little. There was some outdated language. Several sections of it were out of date with current state law, like the vending machines section, which needed further addressing, and they took care of that as well. So let's see. What this would do would be to eliminate the ability of multi-unit residences in homeowners associations to identify units to remain smoking units. All units would be 100% smoke-free. Homeowners associations and property managers of apartment buildings could also make their properties 100% smoke-free if they chose to, but it also allows them to maintain the option of creating a designated smoking area outside, provided that it met certain qualifications of being a reasonable amount of feet away from doors, windows, private open spaces. The other issue that this addresses is that all, it would take effect 30 days after the date of adoption, and then all property managers and homeowners associations would have a year after the effective date of the ordinance to both decide if they wanted to be 100% smoke-free properties, or to update their leases or homeowners association rules and procedures to announce that the properties and the units were smoke-free. We did receive a call from the Smoke-Free Coalition of Marin, Liz Emerson, who wanted us to note that they maintain their ability to be a good partner with the town to help publicize the ordinance and make themselves available. On their website. They have a complaint form, and they can be the first line of defense to help mediate any issues people have with their neighbors, or smoke infiltrating through shared walls or ventilation systems. So they are available to help us with that. And that maintains the same situation that they have had in previous years. So it may be that we don't need to dedicate as much code enforcement time if they're able to handle problems before they reach the town. And I believe they're on the line tonight to speak to those concerns as well.
Great, thank you very much. Anything else, Rebecca?
No, just that Amy Ackerman did state that this is a very complicated ordinance and law to try to explain. And I know I stumbled over some of it, but
you did a great job.
Happy to answer any questions you might have. And I know that we have people on the Zoom tonight that would also have questions.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys for putting this together, and thank you to the residents and activists, especially the high school students who brought this to our attention over the last couple months.
Can I also note that I did send notices out. You probably all saw the notice of public hearing that we published on Friday along with the council packet. I did send it out to all homeowners associations and property managers of apartment buildings in town that I had record of, and I made some phone calls to try and get property manager email addresses to send that to as well. From those that I heard back from, there were no emails or concerns or opposition received, but I did try to notify as thoroughly as I was able to.
That's great, thank you. Do we have any questions from council members on this item? Yeah, David?
There are 2 blanks for dates to be filled in on page 9, section 6.14.040. And I just wanted to make sure that it's crystal clear to staff exactly what goes into those 2 blanks on page 9 with respect to dates. I think they're blank because it takes effect a certain time after
30
this.
days following the date of adoption, and then 1 year following that date, I believe.
Yeah.
So if it is brought back, if it is introduced tonight and then brought back for adoption at the March 16th council meeting, if it could be adopted, then I believe 30 days following that date of adoption would go into 1 blank, and then 1 year following that date would go into the 2nd blank.
Perfect.
Perfect. Good clarification, David. Thank you. Any other questions from council members? If not, then we're going to go ahead and open this up for public comment. So any members of the public on the line who would like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom now or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. I'm not sure how many folks on the line are looking to comment on this. So if we could just ask everyone who's planning to go ahead and raise your hand now so we can gauge how much time to budget, that would be great. And Rebecca, maybe we'll start with email public comments. How many email public comments do we have? I've seen 2, and they were both pretty brief, but I'm not sure if there were others.
I'll need to check. I know that I just saw one, a new one come through that wasn't in your email, but I have not checked to see if that person is also on the meeting. We have 2 more. Since the packet was published, and I think we have 5 or 6 to read. One is on the longer side, most are brief, and they're all available on the town's website currently.
Okay, that's great. So that's a pretty dense amount of comments. So we're gonna go through. We'll start with the folks on Zoom, and we'll do 2 minutes apiece for all these public comments, and then we will get to the council discussion. So we will start with Barbara Solomon, and then go to Pam Granger after that.
Okay, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, thank you for finally doing this in Corte Madera. I'd say it's beyond time that we should have done it. I used to work with the San Francisco City Attorney's Office and did a lot of work on tobacco control issues back then. And before I moved to Marin, I drafted legislation banning vending machines and banning self-service access to tobacco products and so forth. I was a little shocked when I first moved to Marin in 1993, and there were still vending machines in restaurant lobbies at the time. We're a little behind the time, but at the time, I would say 4 out of 5 of the council members, I could be off on the numbers, a majority of the council members at the time were all smokers, active smokers. So that could explain it then. But kudos to the high school students for bringing this to your attention. It's about time we moved to 100% multi-family unit, smoke-free housing. And, tobacco ingestion is the #1 preventable cause of death and illness in the United States. So kudos to Corte Madera for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. We're going to go to Pam next, followed by Dr. Bundy.
Good evening, Mayor Beckham, council members. I'm Pam Granger. I'm the chair of the Smoke-Free Marin Coalition. I was actually with the town of Corte Madera back in 2014. I was paid to do this kind of work by the American Lung Association. And in all fairness, the policy that you're contemplating updating was the model policy of the time. This sort of falls under the category of what we know now that we wish we'd known then. So the importance of updating now was really well outlined by the youth who spoke so eloquently in December. They covered the health consequences of exposure to secondhand smoke, and they provided well-researched reasons for your update. If you had occasion to look back at the old policy, it was pretty convoluted. It was designed to be 100% policy, but one could decide to be down to as much as 80%, but only if you made decisions by a certain date. And if you didn't do that and you didn't hand out a policy, then all the units went to smoke-free. I'm willing to bet by the fact that there haven't been any correspondence by some of the property managers that a good deal of them are already smoke-free. I want to reinforce the concept that Smoke-Free Marin is part of the group that's will offset your cost by doing advertisements and public outreach in order to reinforce the understanding of the current policy managers. So thank you again. We're so thrilled to have you be one less for us to go back to be updated with the times. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much. We're going to go to Bob next, followed by Jeremiah.
Okay. I think this is a good direction to go in, and we really need to make Marin smoke-free. From the standpoint of Corte Madera, my only really strong recommendation is we should try to coordinate with Larkspur and San Anselmo, because it's a Central Marin police or our code enforcement officers that are going to have to act on any complaints, and trying to keep it all the same for the Central Marin Police, I think is a good goal that we should try to achieve. So that's my one comment. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Bob. Great point. We're going to go to Jeremiah next.
Hi, Mayor Beckman. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. Actually, with regard to the enforcement, I have personal experience being the first person that made a complaint based on the existing law, and that goes through the code enforcement officer, not really through Central Marin Police, but it's always good to have coordination and ultimately close up the loops in the neighboring jurisdictions. You know, my family and I were personal victims of people that were smoking in the unit above us in this condominium complex. And it's particularly important to understand that people who rent condominiums are really vulnerable, because the owners have no incentive to act if they have tenants in adjacent units that are you know, smoking. And it's extremely difficult to actually prove that people are smoking in their units. So I want to applaud you and also thank the code enforcement officer for really stepping up and doing a super job to help us in a difficult situation, so that the ordinances actually really work. There are a couple of points that I just wanted, I've only had a chance to briefly skim through the draft language. I noticed that smoking only defines tobacco and plant products. It doesn't explicitly define cannabis as one of the items. I would encourage the council members to make sure that that gets included in definition 19 for smoking. And also, I see that incense is actually explicitly excluded. You can take a look at the data on fires and structural fires, and burning incense is in fact a fire risk, and it also produces particulate matter that, you know, can irritate people and people's lungs, and also infiltrates buildings and goes through walls. So I think incense should be included.
Great, thank you, Jeremiah. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but we gotta keep the same time limit for everyone. Otherwise, it's not fair. But I would definitely invite you to, if you've got more to say, please just email us the rest of your comment. And oh, fantastic!
He did send an email, and it is included on the town's website at the moment, and the attachments that he included with his email.
Okay,
perfect. Thank you so much, Jeremiah.
Yep, thank you.
Great, thank you. And now we're gonna get Sophie back on here.
Hi, all. As I mentioned earlier, we're just so thankful that you guys did put this on the agenda and that our comments did seem to make a difference, and that's awesome. And just moving forward, we just definitely want to reiterate, since you're taking the time to put this on your agenda and discuss it, you know, really pushing towards that 100% is really where we're at. And we think that's long overdue as a mission, because there's really no point between 80 and 100 and not going all the way there. And there's also a few other cities in Marin that aren't 100%, such as Larkspur, Sausalito, Fairfax, and Marin unincorporated. And we just really see this as an opportunity to, since you guys are being so great and pushing this right now to go 100%, we think it could be a great motivator and reason for the other cities that haven't gone 100% smoke-free to also implement that policy. And we look forward and hope that you guys would maybe help inspire and do that for them, because that would be really great. And so we just hope to see more of our peers protected, and as well as just our community members, because, you know, it's just a time when we know the health risks, and we think that everybody should be able to breathe clean air and not be affected by these things. And especially with COVID, with so many people indoors, it's just the last thing we need is more sickness that can be avoided. So thank you all. And we just really appreciate you taking the time to discuss this issue.
Thank you so much, Sophie. We do not have any other hands up right now, so we'll go now to email public comments. And I see there's also some activity in the Q&A here, so let's do the email public comment, and then we can.
Yes, that was primarily me answering questions about whether or not they could speak if they sent an email to public comment.
Great. Okay, so yeah, let's just read the emails from anybody who's not had a chance to speak in person yet.
Okay, I will do my best to keep the time.
Thank you.
Okay, these are the two that we received that just since the meeting started. And this is from Anita Renzetti, who says, as a recent landlady in Marin County, I found the smoke-free regulations for 80% of units confusing and hard to comply with. Talking to other property managers, I learned that they would have preferred 100%, since otherwise it's unclear whether they needed to enforce lease addenda that stipulate the rental units and the common areas of the complex are smoke-free. Also, residents are frustrated and confused when they cannot be protected from secondhand smoke. Since drifting secondhand smoke is a known risk and there is no safe level exposure, we need to prioritize the need for residents over those of individuals who smoke tobacco and other substances. Your leadership in closing this loophole will make Marin renters and condo owners safe in the future. And for those of us who lost loved ones to smoking, it will encourage them to get nicotine patches, set a quit date, and succeed in kicking their addictions. Thank you for hearing us volunteers from the Smoke Free Marin Coalition, Anita Renzetti. And the next one is from Kelsey Fernandez, who says, Dear council members, thank you for taking steps to protect all residents living in condos and apartments from secondhand smoke exposure. It is particularly important during this time while young people are spending more time indoors while distance learning and sheltering in place. Since there is no safe level of exposure to secondhand smoke and exposure can lead to disease and premature death in non-smokers, it is important that air quality is protected. Thank you, Kelsey Fernandez. The next one is from Liz Emerson, a volunteer with the Smoke Free Marin Coalition. Hello, Rebecca, please read this email as my public comment. Honorable Corte Madera Mayor and Town Council, volunteers, including myself of the Smoke Free Marin Coalition, surveyed 42 property managers of multi-unit housing, including apartments and condo complexes in 2019-20, asking them if they support extending protection from secondhand smoke to all units. 12 of the 42 had already voluntarily established 100% smoke-free policies. 100% of the property managers we spoke to told us that they wish the town of Corte Madera and Larkspur would extend protections to all units. In other words, 100%. Reasons they gave included elimination of fire hazards from combustible, flammable, tobacco, and marijuana products, and the fact that it is impossible to segregate smoking and non-smoking units. They felt that a clear, strong ordinance with no exemptions would make their jobs as property managers much easier. Members of the public who had called the county health department from Corte Madera hope for the same protection that residents in most of Marin's jurisdictions receive since their city councils voted for 100% smoke-free. The ordinances in those communities worked out very well. Those needing nicotine or cannabis use non-flammable products such as nicotine gum, lozenges, or edibles. The county offers compassionate programs to help those who are addicted. They can visit smokefreemarin.org. Liz Emerson, volunteer, Smoke Free Marin Coalition. And the next one is from Bob Gordon, who says, Dear Corte Madera Town Council, as a member of Smoke Free Marin, I urge you to consider the strongest protections possible to protect people living and suffering in multi-unit housing. When a whole family is suffering from harmful drifting smoke, whether coming in from pipes, vents, windows, floorboards, doors, or walls, this can be lessened through a town council that cares about its most vulnerable. Please protect those with asthma, those sheltering in place under COVID, seniors, people, and the youngest among us, most of whom cannot afford to move to avoid this toxic exposure. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Bob Gordon, member, Smoke Free Marin, and volunteer, American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. The next one is from Dave Bonfilio, who says, "Dear council members, I am a volunteer with the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network and a commissioner on the Marin First 5 Commission. I urge you to take up and pass Ordinance 1006 and move to make all multi-unit residential properties smoke-free. Multi-unit residential properties typically house young families with children, folks unable to afford to buy a home, and retired members of society. Everyone deserves a healthy living environment. Science has shown us that secondhand smoke or vapors are dangerous and deadly. Please protect all of the residents of Corte Madera. Thank you, Dave Bonfilio." The last one, I don't think I need to start the clock for this one, but it's from Heidi Meyer, who says, "Dear members of Corte Madera City Council, I am a member of the Smoke Free Marin Coalition and encourage you to extend protection to 100% of residents living in multi-unit housing. Less than 100% coverage of residents still causes too many locals to suffer from drifting tobacco, weed smoke, and vape exposure. All residents of multi-unit housing deserve equal protection from the public health and fire hazards of drifting smoke and aerosols from vaping devices." Heidi Mayer. And I believe that concludes everything that we received.
Great. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And thanks to all of the residents who commented on this. We really appreciate your involvement. We'll close public comment now and bring it back to council for any discussion and eventually then a possible motion. So who'd like to start us off on this? I'll just say, I'll say, I thought Anita raised a really good point, and I think one or two other folks who, in addition to being the right thing to do for public health, obviously, this is also much easier regulation for landlords to comply with than, some 80% where they have to be minding, what's going on in each of their units. I think that, that creates more headache for them. And the only other thing I wanted to say was just that, we wish all luck and success to any of our residents who are struggling with addiction, whether it's to tobacco or anything else. We're here to support you, and we're happy to connect you with any resources if there's any way that we can help. That's all I've got to say. Yeah, Bob, and then Fred.
I just concur completely. We did what we thought was the best thing to do in 2014. This is a better thing to do now. I think we need to do it. I had one question for staff. Do we need to add cannabis into the ordinance specifically for smoking, or is that already covered in? I guess that's for Todd and Amy.
It's a plant.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Amy.
Okay, so the definition of smoke includes cannabis smoke. So we've covered cannabis. I should point out that the existing ordinance does allow an exception for cannabis use for medical purposes. And I have not had any instruction to change that existing provision, but if it's the pleasure of the council to do so, I can go back and take a look. We've got to take a look at the state law and make sure we can do this. I'm pretty sure that we can, but you know me, I like to cover all my bases before I tell council. I just want to highlight a couple of other little things just because we are going to be in the lead of the smoking prohibitions. And that is, it's a complicated ordinance for a couple of reasons. One is, most people don't know this, but one of the few positive accomplishments at the federal government level in the last 4 years is the federal government actually has now prohibited the sale of tobacco to persons under 21 nationwide. But a lot of people don't know that, but a lot of tobacco control is done by regulation, and the federal government hasn't updated those regulations yet. So whether feds are really enforcing this yet, I don't know. The state has tobacco 21, but the reason why this ordinance is so kind of crazily crafted is there are certain areas where the state allows a city or town to be more restrictive, and there are certain areas in which the state does not. So what this ordinance tries to do is plug in every gap that we can that the state doesn't allow. So two things I just wanted to highlight is that we did not have a provision before that prohibited smoking in vehicles owned or operated or leased by the town. So we have that. We also have a new provision of prohibiting smoking within 25 feet or 20 feet of a road crew or a building crew. Construction workers have a very high rate of of smoking, and they also have exposure to smoke because they're out there and people may be near. So we're trying to add protections to as many people as we can.
Great, thank you, Amy. And I'll just also add that to, I think it was Jeremiah's point, since you were talking about the definition of smoke as written in this ordinance, it includes electrical ignition or vaporization. So that would include vaping as well.
Yes.
Bob, did you have any other comments? Thank you for that. Okay, sounds good. Fred, did I see your hand?
Yeah, just two things. One thing, I just want to make sure that when we move forward with this, that I know multifamily, I think it applies to anything that's 2 units or more. It seems like we're focusing on condos and apartment buildings, but it also applies to, I want to say, duplexes and maybe 3 units, the smaller ones. Just want to make sure that we're doing outreach to those owners also, because they may not have property owners or property managers. And the second comment is just, I just want to thank the high schoolers that brought this to our attention. It's probably a long time coming. And also thank staff, both Rebecca and also Amy, because I know sometimes government works slow, but it seems like this got moved along pretty quickly. So I just want to thank them for that.
Good points, Fred. Thank you. And Charles, I think I saw your hand.
So he also mentioned incense not being included, but most of it's plant-based. So would that also be included? And the only reason I ask is because that also, a lot of that has religious purpose for a lot of cultures. And so I would just want to understand that before we directly kind of addressed it. But so it just came to mind.
I recall the state perhaps protecting the use of incense. I'd have to go back and look specifically at the statute. The current ordinance does not expressly prohibit the use of incense. And I think Council Member Lee raises a good point, and we would, I would want to do a little bit further research and look at that issue before.
Todd?
Yeah, sorry, my speaker's in and out. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it was quite.
Okay, sorry. I would just say the direction, and again, I asked Rebecca and Amy to get this to you as soon as possible. And so I really appreciate all their effort to get this to you. And what I've asked them to do is to take this as far as we can, because it's the right thing to do, but to make this enforceable, that we don't have to come back 6 years from now and change another ordinance because it's not enforceable. And so this document that you have before you, I strongly recommend council consider it. And not really spend town counts, our town attorney's time to really vet anything. She's vetted it. Her office is one of the best offices when it comes to this law right here. They've been the leaders over the past few decades on this very issue. And so I recommend, if we're going to approve it, we approve it as is, and it's written for a reason. It's because we can educate, we can actually enforce it. When we get into those issues, one of the things Smoke Free Coalition and the county do really well, 95% of the time, their education and bringing things to residents' attention when they're in violation of this ordinance, we don't have to spend any time on this. Since 2014, we really haven't had to spend that much time. But that 5% of the time when you have to step in and work on it, it takes an extraordinary amount of time and effort to really problem solve the issue. Jeremiah talked about it. We had an issue in Larkspur a while back, and it's extremely expensive and difficult. And so living that a couple of times in the past few years, I asked Amy to really focus on, if we're in that situation, I want this thing to be as sound as possible where we can actually enforce it. And so that is what is before you today. Staff fully supports that. And I just can't emphasize that enough. The incense, I think, are going to get us in a little bit of trouble. We're happy to spend some time on it to come back and just give you an update, but I don't recommend we add it. I don't recommend we spend our town attorney's time on it moving forward.
Yeah, I think Charles raised a great point about the fact that it does have religious and cultural importance, and I think we can stick with this. I think this is a great ordinance the way it's written. I think we can do this, and we can move forward and see if incense becomes an issue. And I doubt it will, but if it does, we can deal with that then. Let's go, David, and then Bob.
I was going to say that I'd like to move the approval on first reading of ordinance number 1006.
Great, thank you. And Bob?
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Rebecca, could we vote, please?
Councilmember Casissa,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Coonheart,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, and thank you to all involved on this. That concludes our public hearings and brings us to business items. Our first business item is 6A, which is adoption of resolution number 8, 2021, appointing a temporary chief building official. And I believe, is that Adam giving the report? Is that you, Todd?
That's going to be me, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I gave Adam and RJ the night off, so you're stuck with me. I'll keep it brief. As the council knows, I've provided you individually updates on a lot of our changes within the building department. And one of our focus is really a reorganization, both in our policy and practice in the permitting side of things, but also with some staffing changes. And so one of those, our building official is going to be leaving the town of Corte Madera at the end of March, and we're in need of hiring a part-time interim position to really fill this position. You know, as it's written right now, we're asking through December to allow us some flexibility, but our intent is to immediately start recruiting for a new full-time building official, as well as working with our cohorts in Marin County to see if there's opportunities to actually share a building official and or inspection resources within the building department. And so you kind of have a couple, you have three paths going. So it's the shared services consolidated discussion. You have a recruitment for, you know, the best possible candidate as a building official to serve the town of Corte Madera, and potentially that shared services consolidation conversation. And then you have the discussion of this before you know, the contract and bringing in somebody who has an expertise, who's been vetted by staff fully, both at the town manager, the planning director, as well as our human resources manager position, to really step into the town of Corte Madera and evaluate an outside perspective, evaluate our systems and start to rebuild our department now as we recruit for a full-time position, because we see that as really being necessary. And it's also a tool to be able to recruit somebody, to know that we're taking the steps to really have a sound and really just top-notch department. With that, Thomas Ahrens has served in the county of Marin for a period of years. He worked for Santa Fe for many years, and he's currently was helping Sausalito in a similar position. So this is a contracted position for services. We did have one public comment from Mary Kaiser, and I welcome her to jump on the call during public comment if she wants to speak to this. But just in really in response to some of her questions regarding the IRS and the definition of an employee, you know, really what we focused on this contract and all of our contracts, and Amy, our town attorney, can speak to this, is really to meet the CalPERS regulations in a situation like this. And a lot of times CalPERS, their regulations are tied to the IRS. So a lot of the questions that Mary brought up in her public comment are appropriate to this contract, and that we had that in mind. We believe we speak to it. I'm happy to discuss this with anybody outside of the meeting as well to make sure we answer any questions. But we believe this contract does that, and that was our intent. And so we recommend council allow the town manager to execute this contract for temporary chief building official services with Thomas Ahrens, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Todd. Do we have any questions for staff on this item? If not, I just had one quick question. It sounds like this may be along the lines of Ms. Kaiser's questions too, but I was just out of curiosity, does a temporary official like this accrue pension liability or those sorts of benefits?
No,
Okay.
and that's why it's really careful on how you write that and how we use a position like this. You know, they can't look like an employee, and CalPERS looks at these contracts and issues very closely. And it's important that both in practice and contract that we operate a certain way so we do not contract and aren't responsible for for pension liabilities.
That's great, thank you. And if there are no other questions from council members here, then we'll go ahead and open this up to public comment. So any member of the public who'd like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email public comment at tcmmail.org. And Rebecca, did we get any email comments on this item?
The email that Todd was referencing, I have that and I can read that portion.
Okay, great. And I'm not seeing any hands go up. Actually, Ms. Kaiser just put her hand up now. So that email was from her, right? So we can go ahead and bring her on then. So Mary, we're going to go to you.
Good evening. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
These group things, I always kind of wonder with my technology. I couldn't agree more with what Todd, I forget the title, but what Todd just said, the tying of the pension and the characterization of, are you an employee, are you an independent contractor, is kind of a complex area. And I applaud whoever it was that wrote that contract, because it is very thorough. It clearly has a lot of thought and care into it. My only comment that I had is in the indemnity section, it calls out that the individual is not considered an independent contractor. And when I looked at that, I was like, oh, does that mean for tax withholding purposes, the individual is an employee, which then means you need to remit taxes? But based on what Todd just went through, it sounds like all those little nooks and crannies that can get the town in trouble from an economic perspective got looked at. So that was my comment from the email. So it sounds like it was addressed.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I am not seeing any other hands up here, so we can go ahead and close public comment and bring this back to the council for discussion and a possible motion. Would anybody like to start us off? And if not, we can just go to a motion if somebody would like to make one. Yeah, Bob.
I'll move to approve.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, David. And Rebecca, a vote, please.
Councilmember Casissa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Mayor Beckman?
Yes, thank you very much. And that brings us to item 6B, which is consideration and adoption of resolution number 9, 2021, regarding the creation of a new position classification titled senior accountant. And I will turn that over to Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Again, this is the second of 2 meetings per a council policy whenever we discuss anything regarding employee benefits, pay raises, or new positions. And so this is before you as a second meeting. Council did direct staff to come back to you for the second meeting to ultimately approve this request. Again, we have a senior accountant that is retiring in September of this year, and our intent is to freeze that position to form this new position to accomplish a few things. And so again, this new position is in the same pay range of the position that we're going to freeze at retirement. And this will allow us within the succession plan and really building the finance department's model moving forward of what we're trying to approve from a service delivery standpoint, but also from a succession planning standpoint. This position then would be available to support Daria, our finance director, when she's not available or away on vacation. And it'll also help us build kind of a second in command infrastructure within finance to allow us opportunities, should that day ever come where our finance director is no longer with us. And so I'm happy to answer any questions. The job description is attached. Again, the pay range is attached. Something we will come back to you on towards the end of the fiscal year will be timing of when if you approve this, of when we actually recruit and fill this position. And we'll come back to you with that on any recommendations. I think Daria's recommendation would be to look towards June or July of this year to allow a few months of transition between the 2 positions before retirement of our senior accountant as we transition. But we'll come back to you at a later date with that discussion. Right now, we're asking for you to adopt this resolution, basically approving the creation of the new position and the salary range, as well as the job description. I'm happy to
Beautiful.
answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions from council members? And if not, we'll open this up to the public. So any member of the public who'd like to comment on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom or email publiccomment@tcmmail.org. We'll be doing our standard 3 minutes apiece. Rebecca, do we have any emailed public comments on this item?
No, we did not receive any emailed comments.
Great, thank you. And I'm not seeing any hands up, so we will close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion and a possible motion. Would anybody? Yeah, Bob.
Move to approve resolution 09/2021.
Great. Is there a second? Thank you, Fred. Excellent. And Rebecca, a vote when you're ready, please.
Councilmember Casissa,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes, thank you very much. That concludes our business items and brings us to item 7, which is council reports, and we will start with the town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I have a few updates at the request of council members and the public, and so please bear with me, but I'll try to go fast. Please ask any questions at the end if you have them. I'm really happy to announce and really thank staff and the council and the community for this, because everybody, it was all hands on deck. But as we're, it's a bittersweet. We're losing our vice mayor and everything he's provided us over the past few years of service. As he moves on to the next evolution in his life and leaving us going to the East Coast, we started the recruitment, and we have 11 applications that you will review and interview at those applicants at your next meeting. And I'll just tell you, it's all public record, and we'll release the names if we haven't already, Rebecca. But out of the 11 candidates, it's one of the most diverse and talented groups that I've seen in a while, and I'm really excited about it. Just not only for filling this seat, but hopefully some of the new leadership moving forward of like helping the town move forward through this really important time. And so thank you. A lot of them are on this call right now, and I'm just really appreciative that they're willing to put themselves out there. This isn't an easy job, but we're really excited about that. Home Key has been moving forward. Our very own Councilmember Casissa has been a big part of that, as well as Leila Mongan and Scott Garland and others. But I really highlight, the three of them really moving this forward. We had a virtual ribbon cutting. It's linked to our website. Please go to it. I thought Councilmember Casissa just said it so eloquently in his summary on that ribbon cutting on the video. It was a really nice event. I'm really proud of Corte Madera and what we're about on that. And so it was just a really, I think it defines what we're all about as a town. And so I'm really proud of that, and proud of our council member and residents for what they did. Right now we have a federal level COVID relief package that's in the Senate right now. And my fingers are crossed on this one, but it's a big one, not only for residents in our community, our business community, but also for the town of Corte Madera. As you know, the town of Corte Madera has taken a leadership role at the direction of the council to really help our business community and residents through this really terrible time. But the town has taken a number of hits as well in the $3.2 million range. Part of this COVID relief package, there's $1.8 million potentially that would come to the town of Corte Madera specifically, unrestricted in funds. If we were to receive that and the Senate approve that as is, what that means for us, it would allow us to divert about $300,000 in losses of rent support that we provided those within our own shopping center. And so that's the first one. The second one is it would open up money and a discussion for council to consider additional support for both businesses and residents if you wish to do so. As you know, this relief package also does that for businesses and residents, but we would be positioned to do that as well. The remaining money it would allow us to put back to our reserve fund and actually add 10% to our reserve funds as is, and really position us in the future should anything happen. But it also puts us on a trajectory, if we were to get it, to fully recover coming out of the next fiscal year through this really scary time for all of us. And so it's an important package. And I know that you all have been very active and vocal with it. I'm cautiously optimistic, but if we need that, and if we get that, we will be in much better shape moving forward. There's been some discussion within the community, our community chats that we have twice a month with the mayor and staff about the dogs off leash in the park. And I just good news, Mike Moriarty, our code enforcement official, and Mike Moriarty is the same one that Jeremiah mentioned, and thanked him for his efforts. He's outstanding in problem solving issues. He helped us hire our newest code enforcement official. So now we have 2 on board. And so we have been going out to the parks and really showing ourselves out there and enforcing, our leash laws, really educating and trying to get a grasp on the issue that we've had out there with all the community concerns. The other one is with the dog park. The dog park issue went to the Park and Rec Commission recently, and it's going to come to the council soon. And I know, the council really directed us. We've been getting a lot of complaints about, just because where it's at and how it's situated in our park, there are certain times in the year where that can really turn into, I don't want to say a mud pit, but it gets muddy. It could be difficult to use. And what's happening is people are going, instead of the dog park, into our park. And so that's causing a secondary problem. And so we went to the commission for a variety of kind of solves. We want to solve this problem. And really, it might be a combination of bark or potentially synthetic grass. And so that's going to come to the council. Staff isn't strongly recommending one or the other. I'll tell you that if we're going to purchase synthetic grass, from a staff perspective, I would like to do it out in the soccer fields, or out in the fields in the park, shared with the school district, not a dog park. But we're going to come to you with a couple of recommendations and options to consider. But that's probably what we're going to talk about: a combination of synthetic grass and or bark, or synthetic grass or bark. And so I'm listening to my words right now and I'm laughing at myself, but it's a big issue, and we have to figure this out. There's cost implications. I think people feel pretty strongly on both sides of this, but it's a quality of life issue that's important, and it's coming your way. And I just want to give you all a heads up with that moving forward. And if you have time to look at that Park and Rec Commission meeting at our last month's meeting, there was some pretty good discussion about that. But I think there was a concern of possibly some that heard that meeting that staff was really pushing synthetic grass. And I just want you all to know, in the public, that is not the case. That is not the case at all. But it will be something that we'll ask you to consider. The other thing is the climate adaptation process. It's in full swing. You approved a $20,000 extension of services right now for our current consultants for the CAP. That is really because we were already past our current contract with them when we added those 2 recent workshops, and then all the additions and modifications we're making to that document right now based on feedback we got from the community. And so what you approved on the consent calendar allows us to finish this, their work. And so we think we'll be done with that shortly. In the coming weeks. And then what we'll do is we'll provide that document to the public for a 10 to 14 day comment period. Based on that, we'll come back, we'll make any changes, and then we'll take that revised document. It'll probably be about 85+% of the CAP to the council to approve. And then what we'll do is we're going to pivot, and we're going to then go back and really focus on really the Mariner Cove, Marina Village neighborhoods, and start to do the work again. We have the attention of everyone. We're going to go door to door, and we're going to re-engage, and we're going to continue the work that we've been doing for 18 months. And based on that process, we're going to bring in some new expertise. We think that is important to this conversation. The council will review that and ultimately approve that recommendation. And then we're going to do the work, and then we'll come back to council when that's complete, and we'll revise this CAP. I'm comfortable with this process, as we've talked about in the past, because I do consider this a living document. This is something that we will continue to evaluate and change as we move forward for decades to come. And so our thought is, during every step that I just outlined for you, I will personally contact anyone that who's made comment about this cap over this 18-month process. I will make sure they have the document, that they understand what the process is, and that they can engage and provide feedback to us immediately. And we will also go door to door, and we will use all of our social media and mailing options for the entire community as well, as this is an important process. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Todd. Do we have any questions for Todd from his fantastic report there? Yeah, Fred.
Yeah, just a couple, Todd. On the applicants for town council position, I think you mentioned, are those names public and are the applications public also?
I want to give that to our expert, Rebecca Vaughn, but yes, I believe it is. The applications and the names are a public record, and they'll be part of the package at this upcoming meeting.
Okay, and then can you
That's
just,
correct.
thanks. Can you just, yay.
I can put them possibly on the website. I need to check how we would do that, but typically during election season, once a prospective council applicant has taken out the binder and returned papers and intent to run, that information goes on the website. So I feel like in this case, once I redact any personal information I need to redact, those applications can go on the town's website, and I can try and get that tomorrow if the town attorney concurs.
Okay. And then Todd, can you describe the interview process? Will that be done all at our next meeting?
Yes. So we will start this interview process. And we have 11 candidates. Usually we allow about 15 minutes per interview. So you'll be able to look at the applications in advance. Staff will work with all 11 candidates if they wish to do so to help them prepare for this interview. And then the council will interview each of the 11 candidates. Okay. And we will ask you to make a selection that night.
Okay. Is there any consideration of splitting it up and maybe having a special meeting the day before and splitting up the interviews? This way may give the public more of an opportunity to hear everybody. Otherwise, we could potentially be looking at like a 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon start time to get through all the interviews. I'm just getting that out there.
Yeah, so my thought, we could certainly do that, but my thought is your council agenda, you won't have much on the agenda. This is going to be the agenda.
Okay.
And so we're going to use this time. Again, these aren't 30-minute interviews. They're 15-minute. And again, you get to see that application in advance. Staff will work with them. We also urge all the candidates to reach out to the council members and introduce themselves as well. But if the council would like to direct staff to consider a kind of a 2-meeting process, we're happy to do that as well.
Okay. And then last question, I'm on a roll. On the dogs off leash, we've had a long period of giving warnings. Now that we have code enforcement officers, are we actually issuing citations, or are we still giving warnings?
So citations have been issued on the CMPA side. On our side, there's an issue that we have that we're working right now with the town attorney with all these ordinances that we've been approving. It's important that we have the infrastructure in place, right? We've always historically relied on, code violations are through the building department, but the actual citation, we've always relied on Central Marin Police Authority. And then there's an administrative process that you have to have behind those tickets. It's a whole infrastructure that you really have to look at. And when you look at the thought process of our municipal code in the past related to that, it really didn't consider us hiring and having us do our own code enforcement at this level with all the ordinances that we've passed. So to answer your question in short would be no. What we would do is we would rely on Central Marin Police Authority. Right now, we're trying to order our site books. We are, getting uniforms for our code enforcement officer. We're working with Amy, our town attorney, on a really streamlined appeal process that we need to put in place, thinking about all these situations and laws that we've recently passed. Yeah, I don't know if anyone understands it or not, but it's caused a huge issue. And so we need to be thoughtful in how we go about it. So I wish I could tell you that we're zero tolerance and we're just writing tickets, but what we're doing is we're like, put your dog on a leash, put your dog on a leash, put your dog on a leash. and you walk them right out of the park, until you do. And or if they don't listen, we're calling Central Marin Police Authority and we're walking them to their car until they get there to have them issue a citation. That's unfortunately what we have to do. And really, if you look at any city and town in Marin County, we are all set up that way. These ordinances were written in the 50s and 60s and 70s. They weren't set up for this type of thing. Luckily, we have a great town attorney and we're almost where we need to be. But we're building our infrastructure. The other good news is Larkspur is working with the town now, interested in really streamlining all of our processes, our appeal processes, our citation processes, and code enforcement in general with us. They're asking to really follow our lead. And so we will be better for it, but unfortunately, we're not going to be where we need probably for another 3 months. We're just not. But you're going to have someone out there and we're going to make sure they're on a leash. That's just what we're going to do.
Thanks. So it sounds like it's a work in progress. And it also sounds like it's not just applied to dogs off leash, but other types of code enforcement that we really never thought about to a certain degree. Thanks.
And Todd, would you say that work with, or those discussions with Larkspur there, would you say that kind of maybe lays the groundwork for potential, a consolidation in or shared services when it comes to code enforcement, kind of sharing our code enforcement operations?
I do. I think Mike is perfectly situated to oversee that and do it. I think our and I've told the city manager this as well, of like, look, we're going to put our systems in place and make sure we have the infrastructure we need in both infrastructure and service delivery. And then we will take something to council as a recommendation and really, turn to Larkspur to really enhance that. But Larkspur is definitely, we both need it. And so, yes, I think that is primed for really one of the next decisions for us to consolidate services.
That's great. Thank you. Any other questions for Todd before we get to council reports here? Alrighty. If not, thank you, Todd. That was a great report. We'll go to council reports next, and we will start with Fred.
Yeah, I attended the Casa Buena monthly meeting, which was last month. Again, Todd mentioned there's a opening ribbon ceremony that's out online. I also attended the age-friendly Corte Madera monthly meeting. So I attended those two. And just one acknowledgement, I want to acknowledge the Corte Madera Lions. Last Saturday, they had their drive-through crab fest. 200 tickets sold out. I think more importantly, though, I think it was kind of like a shot in the arm for the community. It's something I think because of COVID we haven't seen in a while. And even though it was a drive-through, I think there was a certain amount of a social aspect to it, all social distancing, masks and gloves. And I want to thank the town for all their support, including Park and Rec and DPW. So I just think even though it was a drive-through, it was a great event. That's it for me.
And I can attest to that. I came through to pick up a meal, and it's so nice to, be able to see the Lions, even with masks on. I think you're totally right there. So thank you guys for doing that. A very successful event. Charles, do you have a report for us?
Yeah, so I'll let you speak to some of them because we've had shared events that you're much higher up in. But I've started attending the League of Cities and the MCMC, and I've enjoyed both of them. But I'll let you share what the content was. And then I also attended TAM. So the Transportation Authority of Marin is also finding that the anticipated budget shortfall is not as short as they thought. And also there will be more relief for the transportation network. So that was good news on that front to keep that going in the interim. There was also reports about Corte Madera project where they had put in for a state level grant to fill the north-south greenway, which we did not win. We ranked very high within the county, but it's competitive at the state level, and there was equity and diversity points. And I guess I just wanted to talk about some of our recent successes and how those align the town to be much more attractive to those type of grants to improve the community for all. And so we anticipate other opportunities coming up. So I just wanted to share that.
Great, thank you. Bob, do you have a report?
I attended a Marin Wildfire JPA meeting, covered a lot of ground. Probably something we spent a lot of time on was the environmental compliance process, which we are working through with legal And it's just become very clear that's going to be a really critical issue for us for a lot of the work that we want to do. So we're spending a lot of time making sure that we get that right. That's it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Bob. David.
One second. All right, there we go. 4 quick things. I did attend the MCCMC meeting with all, but also my last chairing of the meeting of the MCCMC's Climate Action Committee, during which meeting we had a fabulous presentation from the Drive Clean Bay Area organization, and 2 individuals have been appointed as the co-chairs starting immediately of the Climate Action Committee of MCCMC, Vice Mayor Alexis Feynman from San Anselmo, and Urban Carmel from Mill Valley. And I think that that committee is in really great hands. Attended the meeting of the MCE Clean Energy Board. 2 things. There is a cost relief program that is going in place to help those who have been extremely stressed by COVID with their energy bill. And there's a lot of work underway on trying to find adjustment with the state on the so-called PCIA exit charge, which adds unnecessarily to the bill of anybody who is on MCE Clean Energy. A very significant chunk of the MCE Clean Energy bill is attributed to them, and it is all due to past contracts engaged in by PG&E, whose extra cost is really put on MCE's bills. And finally, the probably last meeting of the Larkspur Corte Madera School District Fiscal Advisory Committee, which has is experienced just this week, and which is experiencing far less stress than was projected just a couple of months ago. They have resolved that there will be no downsizing of any of the staff, any of the teaching staff at Hall or Cove or Neil Cummins for the coming year. There may still have to be some adjustments in class sizes and some other things, but state surplus and money that's coming through from the feds may serve as a rescue there. So things are in pretty darn good shape. And I have to say that the staff of the school district is just doing outstanding and all sorts of extra work, most of it uncompensated. And that's it for now.
Great. And David, did you want to mention about Cindy Winter?
I do. And yes, I think all of us remember Cindy Winter, who passed on February 17th. I would like our meeting today to be adjourned in her name. Just have a couple words. At 87, she rode her bike every day and had ridden all over Europe and New Zealand. Cindy could always be counted on to show up with careful research on the future of transportation at our town council and at TAM board meetings. She was a clear, determined, and always considerate advocate for the cycling community, and in fact, for the rest of us in quality of life, so much so that in 2019, she was chosen Citizen of the Year in Larkspur. Everyone who knew Cindy was inspired by her infectious spirit, her generous heart, sharp intellect, and that sparkle in her eyes. We're going to miss her. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, David. And we will adjourn in Cindy's memory today when we do. I just have 2 items to report on. One was not able to attend the MCCMC economic recovery meeting, but I did submit to them just a quick written report on kind of how the recovery seems to be going in Corte Madera. And then the other thing that I want to mention, which Charles kind of alluded to, was we had League of Cities North Bay Division meeting. When was that, last week? We had a really good presentation from a gentleman. I believe he was with, I think he was affiliated with UC Berkeley. And he was basically speaking to residential segregation in the Bay Area and specifically in the North Bay. And so, we're on this meeting with, all elected officials from throughout the North Bay, and this guy's presenting data to us from basically the 70s through now, showing how, in our communities up here in the North Bay in the modern era, residential segregation in our housing is not only still present, it is accelerating. It's been accelerating in recent decades. And many of our communities in the North Bay are actually more racially segregated in terms of residential, dwellings than they were in the 70s or the 80s. And so I think that was really kind of a jarring, a jarring lesson for me. I think a lot of us elected officials up here think of ourselves not only as, as not supporting segregation, but as being actively opposed. And then to see this data presented to us that, segregation is actually still accelerating today. I think it just shows us that there's a lot of work to be done. The gentleman who presented actually, as part of his presentation, he shared with us 5 kind of recommended zoning policies to help combat racial segregation. So I'll be sharing that with you guys and with our planning staff just as a point of reference. But the main takeaway from that presentation that I just wanted to share with you now is that there's a very strong correlation between single family zoning and disproportionately white neighborhoods. And so I just thought that was really interesting to see borne out in the data. And again, I think a lot more to dig into there, a lot more for us to explore and learn. I know Adam is at the top of his field, and so I'm sure he's got a solid grip on this anyways, but this was new to me, so I just wanted to share that with you guys, and I will pass along this gentleman's presentation and his links to those recommended policies. And that is all I've got for you guys right now, which brings us to item 8. Do we have any comments on our draft agenda for our next meeting?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if I may, I just want to again point out the intent of the next meeting, because it's going to be long, is really to get the interviews and to select our next council member. And so that'll be the focus. So the presentation with CMPA, the business items, we're leaving them on there just so you can see what is coming forward toward the council. But really what you'll see for this meeting will be basically a heavy consent calendar list of anything we need to move forward. And that's it. We're going to focus on getting our next council member on board, and then come back to you the first meeting in April with a lot of these agenda items. And I'll highlight one. It'll be the pension obligation bonds. We're coming back to you with some education and new information as we go through the validation process. And so that'll be the first meeting in April.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, we've got a lot of work ahead of us in the next 2 weeks to really, dive into these applications. Thrilled with the great turnout that we received. And I think we're probably all looking forward to getting to know the candidates and moving forward. Yeah, David.
I think I'm getting clarity from town attorney that in order for that conversation and selection to be made, I need to be off the council. So my resignation, which I've already signaled to everyone, I believe will take effect immediately after this. Well, actually, I would say immediately before the next meeting, and that will be the end of it. I want to just make crystal clear that I have really enjoyed my time. It's been a great honor to be on the council, and it has been a really great honor to be able to work with the quality of staff that the town has, really exceptional quality of staff that our town is lucky enough to have across the board, and starting with Todd and everybody else. So I have no complaints other than I'm gonna miss you guys. Thank you.
David, we'll miss you too. And with that, we're going to adjourn tonight in memory of Cindy Winter, as we said, and also in honor, David, of you and your decades of service to the town, not only on our town council, but as a longtime resident. You've done a lot for our community. I think we're all very grateful to have had you in our community and to have served on the council with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, we are adjourned for the evening.